All right, so good afternoon. No, actually it's noon. How you doing? This is the second time I've been asked to talk and give a speech to students from Cornell University. I hope you're not the same group like last year, because I intend of giving exactly the same talk I gave then. No, there are a few differences. And I've got about an hour, and I thought to myself that I would first of all give some kind of introduction on Israel, a different kind of Israel, which most of you guys are not familiar with. And then I'll give you a more deeper introduction of Keter, the company where you are currently visiting, and the unique innovation center that we have over here, where you can visit afterwards. And that will bring us to about 1:15 or so, and then we have prepared for you a nice traditional Israeli al ha'esh, which in English is on the fire, which is equivalent to the American barbecue. So I hope that will be sufficient, and then you can go back to your tour outside. So once again, welcome, and glad to have you over. Last year, I was invited by MIT professor to give a talk at Massachusetts in Boston, and I mentioned some of these insights that I'm going to present today, and I was so surprised to see that most of the students in the crowd were not familiar with this outstanding story. And I came back to Israel. I sat on my computer and I started writing and gathering information, and the result is what you're going to see now today. Because I believe that there isn't another country in the world that has demonstrated in the past 60 years, like Israel, such great achievements, not only locally, but in more universal context. So let's begin. I'm going to start with a quotation from the book of Yechezkel. "For I will take you from among nations, gather you out of all countries, and bring you into your own land." And that, my friend, is exactly what Israel is doing. Gathering Jews from the exile and bringing them to live in the promised land in Israel. About 2 years ago, I had the privilege of meeting the Israeli Vice Foreign Minister, Danny Ayalon. Then he wasn't in the politics, he was the general director of an organization called Nefesh B'Nefesh. This is an organization with one objective: bringing Jews to immigrate from Canada, the UK, and America to Israel. We're talking about strong Jews, Jews that are financially okay, have professions, have a good life. And every year, they bring over here hundreds of Jews that make Aliyah, that immigrate to Israel. And I heard the story. I said, I have to see this for my own eyes. So I went to Ben Gurion Airport, where you landed, one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, dressed up with a nice suit and so on. Arrived over there, and I actually experienced exactly the same experience that I personally went through 32 years ago when I came from Cape Town, South Africa to Israel as a young 9-year-old boy. Nothing has changed. The country's developed. This is an economical, technological, military empire, but nothing has basically changed. Israel is bringing Jews from all over the world to live in this country. It's got a few pictures over here, and it's a happening, and it's a joyful happening. And you can't understand what happens over there. It's the music and the military, and the scouts are over there, and children over there. And they're hugging and they're kissing, and they kiss in the land when they get off the El Al flight at the airport. It's amazing. I want to show you a few pictures that I took over there. The aeroplane lands, and then a bus picks them up. And this is the old terminal where we used to come in a few years ago. And this is a sight that I couldn't believe. Nothing's changed. 32 years in the same celebrations, bringing Jews to live in this country. But that story is easy because it's bringing strong Jews, rich Jews, educated Jews. But what about bringing Jews from Ethiopia? What about bringing uneducated, poor, elderly, sick people from Ethiopia to live in Israel that will be a liability for our economical educational, and health systems? Who does something like that? Israel does that. Because while most countries don't want immigrants, Israel wants them more the better. And this is one of the great reasons why we are such a success, and I will elaborate soon. Even if you enter the internet site of the Israeli intelligence Mossad, which is the equivalent of the CIA, in their objectives, bringing Jews home from around countries where official Aliyah agencies are not allowed to operate. Bringing Jews home. That is an objective of the Israeli intelligence, not of some political organization. And they are responsible for bringing thousands of Ethiopian Jews to Israel. And of course, years later, these young kids that immigrated to Israel become officers in the army. It's a dream come true. And in Israel, the mitzvah we have to commit ourselves to is that every life is like a whole life. And therefore, one who saves one life is as if he has saved the whole mankind. Setting free the Israeli captive soldier Gilad Shalit after 5 years, Israel paid 1,000 terrorists with the blood on their hands to set one soldier free. This is what we call in Hebrew Kiddush HaChaim, the sacredity of life. Let's go one stage ahead. The redemption of captives and of bodies. Israel paid in lives of terrorists to bring home Israeli dead soldiers from Lebanon 4 or 5 years ago. No other nation is so committed to the holiness of life. And the story begins with Moses setting free Jews in Egypt 3,000 years ago. And he takes the Jews out of Egypt, you know the story, and starts entering the promised land. And you know the Jews are complaining, and oi, and this, and there's no water, and there's no food, and they're stupping, oi, and this. And Moses gets so frustrated. At some stage, they reach the city of Rephidim. And Moses goes up to the mountain and cries to God, what shall I do with this people? For before long they will stone me. Now this, of course, must be understood in the wider context. Jews ask questions. We do not accept the presence or what we are told as is. We always have to challenge that, and we always have to see if there's a deeper answer to that. I see that you're familiar with what I'm talking about over here. Now, if we go back to the Jewish history with 3-4 slides, I think it would be right to start with the Dreyfus Affair in 1894, where a Jewish captain in the French army, Alfred Dreyfus, was found, or actually it was a setup by the French as a spy for the Germans. And this whole anti-Semitic event was the beginning of what I think a wave that eventually brought the person by the name of Theodor Herzl, who visioned the state of Israel, to declare in 1897 in Basel in Switzerland that the Jews need a place to live. And then throughout the 4 first decades of the 20th century, there were better times for Jews and there were worse times for Jews. But no doubt that the Holocaust was one of the most dramatic events that changed the course of history for the Jewish people. And after the Holocaust in 1945, Jews were set free, started immigration to Israel, although the British mandate wasn't very enthusiastic about that. The British were never too pro-Israeli or pro-Jews. And the day that the British left Israel, 7 Arab states attacked Israel. Not 1, not 2, not 5, 7. And the people in Israel were refugees that came from Auschwitz and Birkenau and Treblinka and Majdanek. They formed this kind of army that defeated those 7 nations, Arab nations. My dear friends, no other nation has experienced termination in 1945, independence 3 years later, and a day later, 7 nations attack, and you defeat them. That, my friend, is a miracle. And the miracle is living till this day. As for Nobel Prize winners, there are 177 Jews that won the prize, which are 22% out of the 804 that were given out in the past 100 years or so on. In 2004, 7 Jews won the Nobel Prize out of, I think, 10 prizes. And in medicine, we even passed in the 24%. This is unheard of. Doesn't make sense. This is something that has been acquired by the Jewish people because of their history. It's not a genetical thing. It's a sociological, psychological, spiritual thing. So therefore, sometimes I have groups over here from Singapore for Korea, and I talk to them, and I say to them, you can do exactly what we've done. It's a decision, priorities, and doing it. There's nothing genetical. Jews aren't cleverer than other people. They're just doing it differently. Creativity and innovation. And I'll show you in a few moments what we're talking about. Israel has 10 Nobel Prize winners in the past 64 years. Australia has 11, China 2, South Africa 8. And of course, the big states like France, Germany have much more. But if you look at countries like China with 1 billion people, what have they contributed to humankind? In innovation, in medicine, in literature, in economics, in physics.
Hey, there's Chinese people here.
And we appreciate that. The truth is, I saw that you were there. I wanted to see how you react. Now, just to give you some insights, Jews bury religious books that are torn or wear out. That is respect. The bar mitzvah ceremony where kids at the age of 13 change to being men, young men, they get responsibility. They need to accept the fact they have to be accountable to what they do. No other nation does that. Jewish tradition encourages questions. In a few weeks' time, Jews all over the world will celebrate the Passover, which is a traditional story of the exile of Jews from Egypt to the Promised Land. And at the night, they have a Seder. That's what they call the dinner. And at that Seder, they talk about 4 sons in the Seder. The wicked, the wise, the innocent, and the one who does not know how to ask a question. In Judaism, not knowing how to ask a question is a problem. And at that same Seder, they ask questions. And the question, it goes like this: what is different this night than all other nights? But who asked the questions? The youngest kid asked the questions. Encouraging children from a very young age to ask questions. And although we know the answer to the questions, you still ask the question. That is tradition, that is culture, that is education. Verbal confidence, as I mentioned previously, is another reason for Jewish success. And you can look at all the comedians over here. I always mention Dr. Ruth. I don't know if you're familiar with her, because you guys are very young, but she's about a 90-year-old lady that talks about sex all the time. And of course, she's Jewish. And Jerry Seinfeld, Sarah Silverman, Larry David, Ben Stiller. Jews have a very strong ability to present and talk about themselves. Now, you call it verbal confidence, but we call it in Yiddish chutzpah. You're familiar with the term chutzpah? Now, I had a group of educators and professors from Korea about 2 years ago. And I took them to a school in Renana, not far from here. And as we entered the school, the kids were throwing things and talking, and they said these kids are not very well managed. I said, listen, probably you're correct, but let's look at it in a different way. They don't accept everything that the teachers say, and they challenge the teachers. That's not being mad at. That's what we call positive chutzpah. Now, I asked these friends from Korea, if a teacher at school asks a question, and everybody gives a different answer, so he said that would be very bad. I said, yeah, well, in Israel we encourage that everybody does give a different answer, because if you all think the same, you're going to get the same results, and that is boring. Now, I'm not talking about kids that are not well educated. The general population in Israel is educated from a young age. Ask questions. And even if your teacher knows better, then you must check if she is telling the right story with the right information. Chutzpah comes from the word Yiddish, audacity, if you're not familiar with that. That's chutzpah. Now, you see, this is a cow that unfortunately got stuck under the the fence, and her friend came along over here. Now this picture is okay, but you want to know what chutzpah is? This is the best example. you get the idea. Now, I'm going to tell you a story that I personally experienced. I was coming back from Toronto, I think in 2005, and I was landing at Ben Gurion Airport like you guys landed. I was flying El Al, the Israeli airliner. And as we were approaching Israel, the pilot came on board and said, this is the captain speaking, we'll reach Israel in a few minutes. Please remain seated and do not open your cell phones. It was winter, freezing cold, December. It was raining. The plane landed at Ben Gurion Airport, was approaching the parking. The pilot came up again and said, this is your pilot again. I would like to remind you, we just landed. Don't stand up. Don't talk on your cell phones. Welcome to Israel, and so on. The plane is still approaching the gate, and suddenly, hasn't arrived yet. He comes up again. He says, this is your captain again. And I want to say to all those people sitting down, not talking on the phone, Merry Christmas. And all those standing up and talking on the phone, Happy Hanukkah. That's chutzpah. The story of Israel is a history of outstanding achievements, individual and collective. And today I believe that this great little state of Yah is a modern day miracle that has emerged from passion, inspiration, compassion, love, taking care of your own. Israel provides hope at that exact point when it seems that hope has died. And for years, Jews have yearned to come to this place, and many have. But for those abroad, Israel still represents the triumph over life instead of death. And not talking about the hope over despair, and so on. This is an outstanding story. And only if you understand how big the story is can you understand and appreciate what's happening over here. When Israel was emerged as a young state in 1948, 3 laws were taken that I would like to mention. One was Yom HaShoah, remembering the Jews that were massacred in the Holocaust. One was Yom HaZikaron, in memory of the Israeli soldiers that fell in wars of Israel, and Yom HaTzmaut, Independence Day. The amazing thing over here is that all 3 days occur in the same month, in April. But even more amazing, that same morning, when Jews go to cemeteries to mourn of the dead soldiers that died in the wars that we've had there for the past 64 years, that same evening, at the time, 8 o'clock exactly, Independence Day begins. From grief to joy. This is the story of a nation in survival, but on the other hand, with victory and excelling in everything it does. And it's expressed in these days that if you get in your car now and drive 2 hours northeast, you'll probably reach the Israeli-Syrian border. And if you cross that border, after half an hour of driving, you'll reach an area where kids and families are being butchered by the Syrian government, which is leading the Human Rights Council in the United Nations. And nobody gives a shit. Think about it. 10,000 people, and nobody cares. So when we say never again, we actually mean it. So we have no choice. And when you have no choice, you have to be the best. So that's part of our history, part of our legacy. Israel is about restoring hope at just a moment, friends, when most of the people think that hope has perished. And when we sing our anthem, which is called Hatikva, the hope, we should listen to the words of that beautiful song. As long as deep in the heart the soul of a Jew yearns, and forward to the east, to Zion and eye looks, our hope will not be lost. The hope of 2,000 years to be a free nation, our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. And that is exactly what Jewish kids are educated on. Every day when they sing the anthem, to be free, and the ability to be free nation in our country. And that's why it's called the hope, because this country is about hope. And I would like you all, when you leave this wonderful place at the end of your tour, to remember that everything that's done over here is about restoring hope, and exactly the moment when people think that hope has perished. Thank you very much.